What's going on, guys? This is Carl with the RacerRed channel. So today you are experiencing the 2022 Silver Mountain Hard Enduro. This is put on by Silver Kings this year. Last year it was put on by Sticks and Stones, but it switched. So this year it has a huge Enduro cross course right at the beginning where you start. And here you can really see with a different perspective how big these logs are. They go all the way up to my waist. Huge logs and tire sections, and everything was completely drenched by the time I went, so everything was really nice and slick. Prior to this race I was extremely sick for about a week. I slept in the expedition all the way to the races. Thankfully I had my dad to drive me to the races, so I was just sleeping in the back. And then I did the Prologue, and that was it. That's all I had in me. After the Prologue, which I actually was able to finish, I just wasn't able to do day two. My throat was all swollen and I was not feeling good at all. So even right now my throat is a bit froggy. It's been a couple weeks, but I'm getting better. But yeah, you can definitely see from this different perspective how big these logs are and how wet everything is. And this is actually on day two, I believe, but here we'll switch to day one when I'm about to ride, and you can see here that everything is soaked. It's raining. It was actually more of a kind of sleet. It was really a mixture of rain and snow, pretty sloppy. Here I was actually, so I wasn't trying to go fast here at the Enduro cross course section. There's really no point in doing that unless you're the top three, I would say. Otherwise, there's plenty of opportunity to make your passes elsewhere. So it's hard to really choose a line through here that's nice and safe and just easy to get through. But in hindsight, I probably should have at least just tried to go for it here, just because I got behind a rider here that was taking the lines that I had planned to take, and he gets caught up there. His rear tire fell off the side, which mine did the exact same thing. In fact, a lot of riders were getting hung up right here, and the group before us, a bunch of them got hung up right at that same section. It was kind of tricky. This is a really fun course. They did a great job on this Enduro cross. It was pretty sweet. I kind of had the mentality that I was going to take it nice and easy and just get through that the best that I could without face planting, and I was successful in doing that. Here they rerouted the pros through this section, and this was not what I expected. I'll put it that way. There's so many wet roots all over the place, and it was extremely difficult right away. You started hitting those wet roots and it started kicking you all over the place. And at this part of the race, I'm like, oh great, this is extremely steep and I'm already winded. Each breath in is pretty rough. I don't want to complain about being sick too much here, but I was pretty sick, and it sucks because it seems like there have been a few races now where I've been sick right before the race, but it is what it is. But yeah, I'm just trying to catch traction up through here to get over these logs, which are definitely difficult. That's the whole point of this race. It will test you no matter your skill level. It's a little bit unfortunate once you get behind people that you do have to wait in line. There's only a couple good lines, and you really have to take those lines if you want to get anywhere quick. So you have to wait for them to clear out. But yeah, you can see the roots. The action cameras have a way of making things look tiny. Definitely hang you up and reduce your traction and make it nearly impossible to go anywhere unless you really keep your momentum through there. But all through these woods right here, there are riders hung up on roots, and there's a traffic jam that hung me up right here. And once you hit a traffic jam, it sucks. I thought maybe they would clear out before I got there, but they had stopped, and I'm stuck yet again. But that's the name of the game with these races. You are always in the process of getting unstuck. And when you are doing a hard enduro, that's something to keep in mind, is that, you know, you're in it to be stuck and to be on the edge of traction and to basically just try not to crash the entire time. I mean, it puts you in a mode where it's literally the hardest stuff you've ever ridden the entire race. I mean, the entire race is just filled with extremely steep, loose, slick terrain. It is the hardest terrain that they could come up with. So there's a bunch of times here that really caught me off guard as far as getting hung up on the bottom. Actually, when I went down on the bike, it kind of caught me off guard. It was weird to me that it messed up my bike as much as it did as well. It broke my front fender off and ripped my handguard off, both partially, so they're both just dangling there after this wreck. But it seemed like these logs, for some reason, I couldn't get over them. Like, normally I would have just rode right over them, but for some reason, it must have been just how slick they were, but I kept getting hung up and it would catch underneath my bike and really just stick me. So there was a couple times where that happened just on this first hill, and it was really getting frustrating for me. And right here I'm trying to keep my momentum, and I hop over these logs here, but this one here catches me. And just enough where I have to throw my bike against that tree, and man, it broke my bike all to pieces. My front fender was flopping around for the rest of the race, which was super annoying. And my left handguard is sticking straight up after this. It's really not a major crash, it was just kind of a tip over against that tree. I ended up making it over the log, but I think it was one of those roots that stuck me, because I should have made it over that log, but I think the root stuck me in the engine cases and stopped me in my tracks. And this stuff is brutal snow. It is slimy, slimy. Again, they did an awesome job on this course. One of the cool things about entering these races is you would never get to ride this terrain in any other scenario, legally anyway. This stuff is really, really pretty, and you're just riding up in the clouds, literally. I believe the elevation up top is around 6,200 feet, and down at the base it's about 4,100 feet. And you can ride from the base all the way to the top in a gondola, or a gondola. I always mispronounce that, but yeah, the gondolas are pretty sweet. They go a long ways, and apparently, don't quote me on this, but I think it's the longest gondola in the United States, or maybe even the world, the one that goes from the town of Kellogg all the way to the top of Silver Mountain. And it'll just drop you off right at the top there. That's not how the racers get up there. That is how a lot of the spectators get up to the top, but the racers all go in a parade from the bottom all the way to the top. And we're just riding on the streets and getting cheered on by the people in town and everything. It's pretty cool. It's a cool experience. So I figured I would be better off in the snow here, but I was wrong. I may have been better off if there were no other tracks in the snow, but there were just other tracks going all different directions, and I was getting cross-rutted, so it was throwing me sideways in that slime. So I ended up just getting back over to the main line there. And again, this is all real slimy, and the shale rock that's mixed into this soil really makes it difficult to catch traction. And going through these downhills and uphills, keep in mind that the GoPro is flattening everything out. It's not showing you how steep stuff really is. If it looks steep on the GoPro, it's probably like straight down. I mean, this video does not do real life justice. It doesn't at all, not even close. This stuff is absolutely brutally steep, and it is the steepest terrain you will ever come across. Really, I don't ride that much. I mean, all things considered, I'm only getting out. I've been super busy this year, in a good way, but I've been really, really busy, and I've only been getting out maybe once a week, if that. So this race is actually a huge national race, so people are coming from different countries and all over our country. So there are the best riders from all over coming to these races, and it's really cool to see that. But I saw a couple people there that were just like excellent riders. Trailbound, I think is his name on YouTube. He seems to ride constantly. He's probably putting 500 hours on his bike every year. So that guy's putting crazy amounts of time on the bike. And so I saw him there. There's a bunch of riders, but you know, basically anybody who enters this race, you have to be really, really used to steep terrain. If you aren't, then you might as well not even show up. It's not like you're gonna ride through the entire course and just be totally fine unless your name is Colton Haker or Keith Curtis. I mean, you're gonna be basically just brutally grinding your way through the course no matter who you are and how much you ride. So it's definitely something to be prepared for. Not a lot of people who don't watch hard enduro a lot, you know, even watching guys like Graham Jarvis, the best rider on the planet, you watch him in these hard enduros and he's struggling a lot of the time, and that's just the name of the game. That's part of the sport. So there's a left-hand turn right here, and actually this hill wasn't too bad. I could have made it very easily had I not almost crashed, but you can see right before I made the turn, I got knocked sideways and it totally jacked up my momentum, and I knew I was in trouble, so I had to turn around and had to take another run at it. If I had a 300, it probably wouldn't have mattered. I could just rolled on and just chug up that, but with this 250, it just didn't have enough to launch me at the very beginning to get me enough momentum to go up and over the top. So I had to waste a little bit of time just to get back down to the bottom and get a better run at it. The bike was running pretty good in this elevation, seemed to be doing pretty good. If I was to do hard enduro just non-stop, I think I would definitely be running a 300. This 250 is more lively, and it's just, I think it's more fun to ride than the 300s, but for hills like this one, where I made a mistake at the very bottom and almost went down, and then had to recover from that, a 300 would have been very beneficial. So here, just going through, and there's the hardest hill of the course is right here, which is coming up, and it is a really long hill climb. The best line by far is right up the middle, up that rock, but it was all plugged up with riders the entire time, so I had to go around that, and I took a line to the left, which was not ideal. But yeah, if there weren't a bunch of riders right there constantly plugging up that middle line, I would have just taken that one. But instead, I took a line off to the left, and so I had to do way more climbing, and but that just goes with the territory. I mean, it would have been much better to take the middle line here, but like I said, you gotta improvise and just kind of do whatever makes sense. And what made sense was just to go to the left and go around those riders. This is a section where it's really beneficial to get somebody else to help you push and pull the bike up. It's a little bit too steep for me to get momentum going. Just naturally inspired, I can get off the bike and push, but that's pretty much it. And with being sick, I didn't want to do any pushing. I didn't want to push myself too far because I was getting tired real fast, and just wasn't feeling good enough to push the bike. So I was trying to do this while staying on the bike and not pushing myself too much. But I did actually get assistance a couple times. I actually, only in this section, I had another rider kind of help push my bike up to this tree, and then I helped push his bike up. But right here, you have to be really careful not to slide off the side. In fact, most of these side hills, you have to be careful of that. Usually they are steep enough to where if you get your tire off the side, out of the main line, then it'll start sliding sideways, and it just won't do you any favors, because then your bike will just slide off, and you can see my bike right there start to do that. And the second it starts doing that, it's best to grab your bike and get it back on the line. You might as well not even fight it. You just have to put in the work and lift your bike back up to the line. Otherwise, if you try to just push through, it'll get worse and worse, and pretty soon you'll be cartwheeling down the hill or sliding down the hill. And this was a section that not all the classes had to do. These races are now like a European standard, so now they go gold, silver, bronze, and iron. Those are the classes. So gold is pro, and so on. Also, they have prologues now, and the entire setup is very similar to how the Europeans do it. Right here, I was kind of regretting not just waiting for that middle line to clear, and that way I could have just taken that, because I did see that, you know, once you get off to the side here, there's only one line you can take, and you gotta wait for other people to go. So, not the best situation, but again, doesn't matter all that much as long as you can get through it. At this point of the race anyways, that's kind of the mentality I had, is just, you know, it's not that big of a deal, I'll just get through it. But the soil wasn't all bad. Some of the soil was pretty good, actually, depending on where you were. The rock being wet wasn't ideal, and the roots being wet were pretty rough, but the soil itself, in a lot of spots, it was actually pretty decent. Getting up onto this shale rock, you can see I'm kind of pivoting my front end around, but I'm trying to get up onto the shale rock, and once you get there, even though it is wet at this point in this stage of the race, you can still hook up on it pretty well, so you can get pretty good traction and stick to it and lunge your bike forward. Still waiting in line here, and at this stage, I mean, if I was healthy, I would have been a little frustrated here, probably. I would have been trying to push forward, but in my condition, I was just going with the flow. I didn't really care. I knew I wasn't going to do day 2 anyways, so I was just here to ride pretty much. Here's a good perspective of the rock and how big it is. So you can't tell any of the sizes of these rocks until I get real close to them. Like I think I tip over here, I get my foot caught, and then you can really see how big these rocks are. But the GoPro makes them seem so small because they're so far away. But here you can see that they are up over my bike and just as big as my tires. They're huge rocks. But once I stand the bike up, you'll notice they just look like pebbles again. And it's weird to me that the GoPro really has that much of an effect, but it really does. You can't tell how these rocks really look in real life. Riding up in the clouds, it's kind of a weird feeling. You can see the clouds moving over the top of us, and everything's wet. It's a different experience. Half the battle is really showing up and experiencing this, because, you know, not very many can finish the race, but entering the race is really where it's at. I mean, you enter and you get to experience some of the craziest terrain you've ever been on, and there are no other trails really like these. Just waiting for this rider to kind of squeeze out of the way here, and dropping some shale down my way. I don't know if it would have been better in hindsight to follow that rider and just go up the shale rock or go into the woods, but I chose to go into the woods. And I did see other riders gridlocked in there, and I just figured I could get through them, you know, good enough. But it was actually pretty slow going once I got into the woods here. It was too slow going.
Good time, huh?
So I think it probably would have been best if I stayed on the shale and just kept working my way up that direction. Like I said, you know, there's only one line. Once you start into these places, there's only one line you can take. It's not like I can point my bike straight up right here and just go that way. So I have to follow these lines across this mountain, and once I get into those lines, then you're kind of stuck with wherever the other riders are. You're pretty much stuck behind wherever they're blocking the path. Here I could really go for a nap. You can see the steam coming off of me. I was so exhausted and tired. Still having fun though. Just go into it with the right attitude. If you've never done one before, I highly recommend it. Just go into it with the attitude of, I'm going to be struggling the entire time, and that's part of it. You just learn how to work your bike on the side of these mountains. Here my bike went off the main line and started sliding down the mountain, so I had to pull the bike and the rear tire back into the line in order to stay on track without falling off. Like I said, if you push it and try to just keep going anyways, your bike will end up in a terrible angle on the mountain, and sometimes it'll actually start sliding down the mountain uncontrollably, and that's just no good. So it's better just to stop, get your bike back online, and do your best to stay in that line. But here you can see there's bikes across the trail. There's all kinds of chaos up ahead, so there's not a lot of area for me to go right here. This guy was kind of just telling me that there's really no line that works best here. He said patience is key, and that had I showed up 5 minutes ago, it would have been much easier because it was way better traction, apparently. So he was just laughing, saying that I should have shown up earlier so it was easier. Yeah, you can't see, just watching this video, you can't see how steep this is, but, you know, I'm using these trees to stop the bike from sliding sideways. So I kind of aim for a tree and then attempt to keep my bike in that line and keep it from sliding down the mountain. Here you kind of have a better perspective of how steep it is. You can kind of tell. Generally, my bike holds up really well. The plastic didn't hold up very good in this race, but everything else held up really well. Actually got my Midwest Mountain Engineering clutch dialed in pretty good, so my clutch hand wasn't getting tired at all. I really wish I wasn't sick for the race. That's my biggest regret for this, but I still got to ride at least one race, and I'm pretty happy with that considering my situation. So it was just doing day 2 was not an option from the very beginning. I was just I was so tired. Here it's looking a little bit better. I'm about 3/4 of the way up the mountain, and I'm getting to the point where I can definitely see the light at the end of the tunnel. It might be a train, but it's looking better from here. When it comes to classes, if you join the pro class, the gold class, you get to experience the full race the way it was intended. And it's supposed to be hard. It's hard enduro. I mean, you're supposed to be pushing and pulling and barely making it. But in the lower classes, it's more of a regular enduro, where the terrain is much easier. To each his own. I think the bronze class could be pretty fun to try out. Just if you wanted to take it easy and just have a nice day of racing, I think that would still give you the experience of the mountain. You'd still get the scenery and the terrain, the general outlook on the terrain, but not having to climb stuff like this. It makes you a better rider for sure. But you can see the shale in this soil. It comes loose as you're riding across it and throws your bike sideways. So pretty difficult terrain to ride on. Debris is definitely a hazard when you're doing these as well. You definitely want to wear your goggles as much as possible. Usually I will opt to have my goggles on. Most of these guys will take their goggles off pretty early in the race. But for me, I usually opt to have them on 99% of the time. I'd rather be crashing and struggling and overheating than to take a rock to my eyeball. So that's one thing that I just don't like to take a risk on. During this race, I have tubeless up front and I have a bib in the back. The bib's a bit stiff for this terrain, but still was hooking up fine. I think in the future I will be running probably just tubes or maybe tubeless. Any little push of your bike really helps. So when somebody gets behind it and shoves you up the hill, it really makes all the difference. So from here on out, it actually wasn't too bad. The course was actually pretty easy, and by the time I started going down this, I actually felt pretty good again, just catching my breath, and didn't feel too bad. But probably the most annoying thing of this entire race was having my front fender flop around all over the place. It should have just broken off. I can't believe the thing stayed on. It was completely broken down the middle and just barely hanging on. So it wasn't really detrimental, but the entire race it was just really, really annoying to have it just be flopping around all over the place. The temperatures were, I guess they were pretty cold. It's hard to say. You're working so hard once you start racing that you don't really notice them. I was wearing a sweatshirt, which I shouldn't have worn. I could probably get away with just wearing a jersey. So usually, if you're gonna do a race like this, you'll just want to take as much stuff off as possible, and even if you're cold at first, it'll all work out because you're just working so hard that there's no way you're not gonna be hot enough. And temperature-wise, outside it was probably around like 50 degrees. You can see my front fender flopping around like crazy, hitting against my front tire, and I thought for sure that thing was just going to fall off or get stuck in my front wheel. I was ready for some crazy terrain here, but really the stuff, it was steep, but I didn't have to do anything too wild. This being the Prologue is definitely easier than the main course, so nothing too wild. Alright, going down the final hill here, and I'm gonna go up to the finish line from this hill, take a left-hand turn, and home free. Pretty easy hill climb right here. As long as you keep it up top on these 250s, you really have to keep it up top in order to make it up some of this stuff. But this one was fairly easy. And the finish line. Back around and through the starting area. Pretty crowded up here still. Lots of music and little booths. But lots of people. pretty cool experience. So this is the trip back down the hill. We paraded up to the top, and then at the end of the race we went in small groups down to the bottom to where the parking area was. The clouds pretty much cleared once we got part way down and the sun came out. You really got some of the great scenery coming down the mountain, and this stuff was just this is what you expect from Idaho right here. This is just beautiful terrain, dropping from around 6,200 feet down to 4,100 feet on this ride. You go down trails about halfway down the mountain. You end up on some dirt road. That guy almost went down there. You go down some dirt road here. Once we drop down through this dirt road, we'll be on a paved road through town. You can see the gondola. And that gondola goes from that building right there all the way to the top where the starting line is. Crazy long gondola ride. Really a cool experience. Anyways, guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry that I couldn't get more of the race for you guys, but there's always next year. I really plan on hitting the entire race next year, getting the full experience. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be out riding and making more content. I'll catch you on the next video. See you guys. Peace.